Even as the institution grieves its own credibility, the House of Windsor is being forced to answer a question it has avoided for decades. What happens when a king who has waited his whole life for the crown can no longer carry its full weight alone? That question isn't hypothetical anymore. It's playing out in real time, in police statements, in palace briefings, and in a wave of insider reporting that, however much it can be verified, all points in the same direction. Something is shifting inside Buckingham Palace, and Prince William is at the center of it. Today, we're separating what's actually been confirmed from what is speculation, because this story has attracted more than its share of both. It's also a story that spawned an entire cottage industry of royal gossip content. Videos and articles built almost entirely on unnamed palace insiders, dramatic ultimatums that were supposedly issued behind closed doors, and quotes attributed to people who have never actually said those words in public. Some of that content might turn out to be accurate. Some of it is almost certainly invented, or at minimum heavily embellished, because that's simply how a certain corner of celebrity media operates. Headlines built to travel, source to nobody who can be named or held accountable. That doesn't mean there's nothing real happening. There is. We'll walk through the arrest that triggered this latest chapter, the documented 7-year decline that preceded it, the health crisis reshaping King Charles's reign, the very real and well-documented ways William has been stepping into a larger role, the actual constitutional rules that govern how royal power transfers, and the palace tensions at multiple outlets, through unnamed sources, say are simmering beneath the surface. Where something is confirmed by the palace, by named officials, or by direct public statements, we'll say, so clearly. Where it's coming from an anonymous insider or a celebrity gossip outlet, we'll say that too, and we'll let you weigh it accordingly. Let's get into it. On February 19th, 2026, his 66th birthday, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested by Thames Valley Police on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Police officers were seen arriving at his residence near the Sandringham Estate in Norfolk that morning, and he was later taken to Aylsham Police Station, roughly 50 miles away, before being released after about 11 hours under investigation, meaning he was neither charged nor cleared. The arrest followed weeks of fallout from a massive release of documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein. On January 30th, 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice released millions of pages from the Epstein files, and among them were email exchanges between Andrew and Epstein that raised new questions about what exactly Andrew had shared with his old friend. Investigators are reportedly looking at whether Andrew forwarded confidential government trade reports, material connected to his former role as a UK trade envoy, including from visits to Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Singapore in 2010, to Epstein after the two men were supposedly no longer in contact. If that sounds familiar, it's because this is really the second act of scandal that first exploded in 2019, when Andrew sat for a now infamous BBC Newsnight interview about his friendship with Epstein. That interview was widely seen as a disaster for the royal family, and it triggered years of steadily eroding public tolerance for his continued presence in royal life. By October 2025, King Charles had stripped his younger brother of the title Prince, removed him from the role of the peerage, and pushed forward his eviction from Royal Lodge, the Windsor estate he'd occupied for years. From that point on, the man once known as Prince Andrew, Duke of York, became simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The misconduct in public office charge under investigation carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment in the UK, though it's worth being clear. An arrest and a subsequent release under investigation is not a charge, and Andrew has denied wrongdoing throughout. What makes this moment different from earlier chapters of the Andrew saga is how the king responded. Buckingham Palace statements about the family are typically handled at arm's length, filtered through officials, carefully neutral in tone. This time, Charles broke from that pattern and issued a personal statement, signed Charles R., saying he learned of the arrest with the deepest concern, and adding a line that royal watchers immediately flagged as pointed. The law must take its course. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, asked about the arrest at an international summit, said plainly that it showed no one is above the law. Police also confirmed something procedurally notable, that the Home Office was given 30 minutes notice before the arrest took place, in line with routine practice. It's a small detail, but it underscores how unusual this entire sequence has been. A serving king's brother arrested, searched, and investigated, with the palace's own language making clear it isn't going to shield him. It's worth pausing on just how long this decline has actually been in motion, because the arrest in February 2026 is really the culmination of a 7-year unraveling, not a sudden event. The 2019 BBC Newsnight interview is generally treated as the point of no return. Andrew's answers about his friendship with Epstein, including his account of a visit to Epstein's New York townhouse and his explanations for photographs placing him with Epstein's associates, were widely regarded across the political spectrum as a public relations catastrophe. Within days, he stepped back from public royal duties. For years after that, Andrew remained in an odd limbo, stripped of his working royal status, but still formally holding his titles, still living at Royal Lodge, still technically the Duke of York. That limbo held until 2025, when the pressure became impossible to manage quietly. Over the course of that year, Charles moved to strip Andrew of his prince title, remove him from the role of the peerage, and push forward his eviction from Royal Lodge, the multi-decade lease it had, until then, protected his right to stay there. By the time the January 2026 Epstein document released it, Andrew had already been reduced, in institutional terms, to about as little standing as a member of the immediate royal family can have without a formal act of Parliament stripping his remaining titles entirely, which constitutional experts have noted would require actual legislation, since titles like Duke of York, Earl of Inverness, and Baron Camilla aren't things a monarch can simply revoke by decree. The February 2026 arrest, then, wasn't really a new scandal breaking. It was law enforcement catching up to a reputational collapse that the palace itself had already been managing piece by piece for years. To understand why William's role has become such a live question, you have to understand the position Charles is actually in, not the speculative version, but the documented one. What is on the record is this. In October 2025, when Andrew was stripped of his remaining honors, reporting at the time credited Camilla with playing a supportive role in that decision, particularly given her long-standing public work supporting survivors of sexual abuse, an area where she has a genuine, well-documented track record of advocacy, including public engagements with survivors. In February 2026, she was seen at events supporting that same cause. Whether her private views on Sarah Ferguson created friction with William's preferred approach is, again, something reported by unnamed sources, plausible, consistent with a broader pattern of reporting, but not something either party has confirmed. The same caveat applies to reports of tension between Kate and Camilla. It's true and documented that Kate has taken on a more visible public role following her return from cancer treatment, and that she and William have appeared together at events projecting stability during the Andrew crisis. Whether that visibility has caused friction with Camilla is not something that's been confirmed by anyone on record. It's a claim from unnamed sources in outlets that specialize in this kind of family dynamics reporting, and it should be weighed accordingly. Because so much of the Camilla speculation hinges on Sarah Ferguson's connection to Epstein, it's worth being specific about what's actually been documented there, rather than leaving it vague. The January 2026 document release included years of email correspondence between Ferguson and Epstein, and it paints a picture that goes well beyond a passing acquaintance. In messages from 2009 and 2010, Ferguson repeatedly asked Epstein for money. In one, dated October 2009, she wrote that she urgently needed a 5-figure sum for rent, saying her landlord had threatened to go to the press. In another, from May 2010, she asked him to consider hiring her as a house assistant, writing that she desperately needed the money. Correspondence also shows Epstein providing her roughly £15,000 to settle debts around that period, an arrangement Ferguson later publicly called a serious misjudgment. The emails also show a warmer, more personal tone than Ferguson's public statements about Epstein over the years would suggest. She referred to him at different points as a uniquely generous friend and, separately, as being like the brother she'd always wanted. That's notable because publicly, Ferguson had criticized Epstein and his conduct, and one email shows her privately apologizing to him after making those critical remarks, at a point when Epstein was reportedly threatening legal action over her comments. A spokesperson for Ferguson has said that email was sent on the advice she received at the time to try to defuse Epstein's threats, and that she regrets the association. Since then, she steadily expanded her public program, including continued work on early childhood development through her own foundation, an area she's spoken about as a long-term personal priority independent of her royal duties. That combination, Kate rebuilding a public program while William absorbs more formal institutional weight, is part why coverage increasingly frames the Wales household, rather than Charles and Camilla individually, as the emerging center of gravity for the institution's public-facing work. So here's the honest at play. It is confirmed that William is taking on more formal duties, that he's spoken publicly about wanting institutional change, and that his father's health has made near-term succession planning a live topic rather than a distant one. It is not confirmed, because no one in an official capacity has said it, that William has been handed final authority over any specific area of royal decision-making, including the handling of the Andrew case. That characterization comes from unnamed sources cited in celebrity and royal gossip outlets, and it should be treated as reported claim, not established fact. This is a part of the story that's hardest to get right, because it's also the part most saturated with anonymous source tabloid reporting, some of it plausible, none of it verifiable in the way the arrest itself is verifiable. Multiple outlets, including celebrity and royal-focused sites, have reported ongoing friction between William and his father over the pace and severity of the response to Andrew, and separately, a strand of reporting describes tension over whether Charles remains open to reconciling with Prince Harry, with Charles reportedly more willing to consider it than William. Again, these characterizations come from unnamed palace sources and insiders, repeated across enough outlets that they likely reflect something real being whispered around the institution, but without a named, accountable source. They remain reported claims rather than facts. There's a separate strand of reporting involving Camilla, focused on her decades-long friendship with Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's ex-wife. Sarah Ferguson has been named in correspondence within the released Epstein files. There's no indication of wrongdoing on her part, but her past contact with Epstein, including messages asking for financial help during a period when her businesses were struggling, has kept her tied to the broader controversy by association. Tabloid reporting has claimed William wants Camilla to distance herself from that friendship for the sake of the institution's image, and that Camilla has resisted on the grounds that a decades-old friendship shouldn't be severed over guilt by association. None of this has been confirmed by the palace, and no direct quotes attributed to either William or Camilla in that reporting can be verified as authentic. They should be read as characterizations from unnamed sources, not as things either of them has actually said publicly,